Hello, everybody. Welcome to another round of EyeOnOshkosh. We have been gone since March of 2020. We were shut down because of COVID, like everything else around the world. And this is our first time back taping a show with you guys. So we're really happy to be back. And I think I speak for the whole crew in saying that, you know, we missed being here. We missed giving you guys information. We missed having lovely guests like our illustrious mayor here. And, you know, just kind of letting you know what's been going on in the area or what is upcoming in the area. And in general, just being a part of your life. So we're really happy to be back. You'll notice we have a brand new set. It's big. It's like a huge island. And we have new cameras. We have a whole new control room here at Oshkosh Media. So, and a new open and close, which you already saw the open, and you'll see the close when we're done. So anyway, one little note to the various people who contacted me throughout the last year or so. I heard from a number of folks saying, you know, we've got this going on that we'd like to come on and talk about. Clearly those things are now past, but if you did contact me with something that you wanted to talk about and it was not time sensitive, please know that I have saved all those emails. I will be getting in touch with you, and we will get you on the show now that we're back. All right, thank you very much. So I thought it would be nice, as I mentioned on this first show, to have Mayor Lori Palmeri on. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so good to be back.
Yes, us too. We feel that very much so.
We're back.
Yep. So you've been elected to a second term.
Yes.
And how do you feel about that?
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure you're happy, of course.
Well, yes. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised. You know, last year was rather rough in many aspects, but I was very honored and thankful and grateful to have the opportunity to get a second chance, because it feels like everything time-wise got so concentrated on all things COVID that some of our other issues that we were working on, you know, just got a little delayed. So very glad to have 2 more years to serve as the representative of this great city.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you know, it's funny because as far as the new equipment that was coming in here, we knew about that about 2 years ago, and I started working with our director, one of our directors, Daryl and Scott here from Oshkosh Media. We started working on a new open and close 2 summers ago already, back in 2019, waiting for the new equipment to come in, and then I don't remember if COVID hit before it came in or if it came in and then COVID hit, but in any event, we were shut down from March on, and so now we're finally getting to do everything.
Things have changed a little, right?
Yeah, and it's almost like that whole last year was, it's just sort of a blur.
It's a pause. I call it the great pause.
Mm-hmm.
The great pause.
Yeah.
With reflection, much reflection, and so many people are making, you know, big life-changing decisions, you know, now that things are starting to come back to as close to what we would call normal previously. So yes, it's good. Change is good.
Yeah, it is. Well, so the 4th of July, we're taping this on the 17th of June, and the 4th of July is right around the corner, although people have been very rudely shooting fireworks off a lot lately. Usually around 9 or 10 at night they start going off, and they're very loud. You're not sure if a truck is backfiring, if there's gunshots, or if it's fireworks. But you know, last year nothing was held because of COVID, of course. And what are the things that are being planned for this 4th of July?
Well, most folks will be very excited to know that the fireworks are returning to Menominee Park. And, you know, we have the co-sponsor, Festival Foods. Certainly, the parade is back on. I hope that my fellow council members will join me in tagging along on that endeavor on July 4th. And I think it's going to be almost like a New Year's Rockin' Eve celebration, right? Because people are so elated to be coming back to events. But, certainly, animals are impacted, people are impacted by all of the extra that happens before and after. And I appreciate everyone's excitement, but just try to be considerate of others. And if you do have some that are, bothersome near you, contact OPD and the Connect Oshkosh app that we will talk about a little bit later, because, they do respond to these things. Depending upon how many, though, they may not get to every single one of them.
Yeah. Well, what I like is the fact that we do have community policing. And so, if you just call the regular police number, they will, route it to the right officers in that area that they generally police. And, some of these fireworks are so loud, you can just drive around with your window open and you can get a pretty good feel for where they're at. So I think that the officers probably do that anyway, just as a matter of
and
record.
I'll just add on to that too. I just came on the tail end of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, which I'm the council liaison the second time around. And we do have a police department representative who participates in that. And it's my understanding the bike force, the bicycle officers, are going to be much more available this summer. So they'll be, going through neighborhoods, going through parks and the farmers market and different events. So yeah, hopefully they'll be able to corral some of those other exercises in 4th of July celebration.
Well, that's great. Now, will they be going throughout the whole city, or are they going to be focused primarily on like the downtown?
I
or
don't
do
know.
we not want to say?
I do not know.
Okay.
I'll just be honest. I'm not sure what their route
Okay.
is.
Well, I think you're right, though, that people should just be respectful of other people. You're endangering people, you're endangering their homes, you're endangering their pets.
There was a huge fire. Was it this morning or yesterday?
I heard a lot of sirens
at the
this morning.
mobile home park where kids were just playing with some sparklers, I believe. And forgive me if I have this incorrect, but it's my understanding that somehow ended up, I believe, a pretty good sized fire throughout several homes there. And, everything is so dry this year.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's so dry that it just goes up like that. It only takes seconds for those things to take hold.
Although by the time we finish this, I think about an hour or so after we finish taping this tonight, we're supposed to get quite a storm. But still, it's not going to be anywhere near enough to get the grass to a point where it's not going to be super dry and therefore very flammable, if you will.
And the other piece of this too, I just might mention, is I often hear from veterans who ask, that folks respect the fact that, they may react, rather negatively in terms of the fireworks and they served our country. Let's also think about, how this would impact a potential veteran.
I didn't think about the veterans and how it would impact them, but that's a really good point. So thanks for bringing that up. It's true. I suppose that could cause a lot of issues for them. So very good. The Declaration of Independence is traditionally read on the courthouse steps here in Winnebago County, and the sheriff generally does that, Sheriff John Motz. And, if it wasn't, of course, nothing was done last year, so I am going to try not to keep saying that. But, that's a really important thing for people to see, even if you just see it once and never again. I mean, he reads it because the original Declaration of Independence was read by the sheriff at that time on courthouse steps. And so we are continuing with that tradition. And, it points out really what, the Declaration of Independence is really all about. It was about freeing the original colonies here in this country from the Crown of Britain. And, we were no longer beholden to Britain. And so that was the whole point of the Declaration. And I think
And
sometimes
that's on
people,
the 4th of July, right? When
Yes.
the sheriff reads that? That's
Yep.
why I think it precedes the parade.
Yeah, he
I don't
usually
recall
does
the
it.
exact
I
time.
don't remember what time in the morning, but it's. I would say it's somewhere between 8 and 9 in the morning. What time's the parade?
Parade starts at 9.
Okay, so yeah, I'm sure he would be out there probably around 8 or so. So anyway, well, we've covered the declaration. We've covered fireworks. What events, just in general, not for the 4th of July
Sure.
necessarily, but just in general, what kinds of things are we now starting to do in person?
So as far as events go, Waterfest, I think, is kicking off tonight. I hope they don't get rained out. I believe the new entity, and I can't recall the name, that was like a smaller version of Country USA, is at the Leach the next few nights. They're expecting a couple thousand folks out there at the Leach. Block parties are back.
Oh, wow.
Block parties were sorely missed last year.
Yeah.
It's incredible how much they were missed. And I believe GoH&I has a block party trailer you can reserve. But August 3rd, we have a whole slew of block parties going on for National Night Out. I think it's the first Tuesday in August. EAA is back. That's coming up here in several weeks. So a lot of those special events that we all appreciate are back. They're back.
And I think we'll appreciate them so much more now. Maybe not in a year or two, but for this year, for sure, I think people are going to appreciate them a lot more because we're able to be out and about with people. We're not having to wear masks, although I still see people wearing masks, and that's fine. Maybe they aren't able to get vaccinated because of some underlying illness or condition. Maybe they just want to be doubly protected. I don't have a problem with anybody still wearing a mask, but it's nice for those of us who are fully vaccinated to be able to be out and about and not wearing masks if we don't want to.
Yes, and certainly for those who might still be on the fence about vaccination and considering it, there are still numerous opportunities throughout our city and the county to get that vaccination on walk-in basis for those who have an interest, and certainly would encourage that so you can feel all the more comfortable in these larger crowds and such. There's a little bit of concern about, yet another new variant. I think it's called the Delta or something.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
So certainly it does feel good, though, to be fully vaccinated. It's very liberating and freeing.
It is, for sure. You mentioned, that you mentioned Go something or other.
Oh, I'm sorry. Greater Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods is a nonprofit that coordinates with our local neighborhood associations to help neighborhood associations form. It might be around an issue about park space, or it might be around some safety concerns or beautification. Everybody kind of pulls these together. It's different than a homeowners association that has all these strict rules and that. But GoH&I is who the city and the Community Foundation contracts with to help coordinate that with folks. And there's some money in it. There's some money in it for your neighborhood. I believe it's $1,000 a year that GoH&I, you can go through a very simple one-page application for community building and engagement events such as block parties and that kind of thing.
And you are saying Go H-N-I, not and I, but Go H-N-I, like nice.
Yes.
Okay. Or neighborhood.
And they're on Facebook, and they have a website, and certainly you can contact planning services as well, and they can get you in contact with Cora or Pam or Stephanie.
Talking about them, Lori, there's only certain areas in the city that have these neighborhood associations.
I think they were up to around 20.
So I don't think I have one in my neighborhood, and I've talked to other people who don't have them, and then I talked to one person who did have, and she hated it. She wished that she didn't have it because I think they wanted to do something with a street, and she didn't feel that it was necessary, and it was going to cost them all money. if they did something to the street. So I guess it has its advantages, but some maybe drawbacks depending on where you're at with things.
And some neighborhoods don't necessarily need an association to be formalized to have that fellowship and that connection and sense of community and relationship building. And others are kind of new to the concept, they've been, and especially last year, folks just kind of, drew the curtains and closed the door. And so, again, some neighborhoods are just kind of naturally already occurring these kinds of things and work on issues together that are of mutual interest. But it's just another tool for those who have an interest.
Sure. And so who would they contact if they either want to see about getting a neighborhood association or
where they are?
Yeah.
We do have a map on the city website. If you look up neighborhood associations, you can see a map to see if you're already in one, because not everybody's had the ability to get the word out. We've had several new ones. There's Midtown, there's Historic Fourth Ward. I think there's a new one forming on the south side. But in any event, it would be to reach out to GoHNI, Greater Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods, Inc., and they're on Facebook, as I said, or the planning department can also assist you.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let's move into something that's a little more debatable and I guess controversial, and that's marijuana. We see so many cities and states moving in the direction of legalizing marijuana, and not just for medical use, but for recreational use as well. And it's really a hot button issue. I mean, it really is. And I guess I lean toward, let's legalize it, because if people are going to get their hands on marijuana and smoke it, they're going to do it whether it's legalized or not. And Governor Evers actually proposed a statewide legalization of it back in February, and he estimated that with a statewide legalization, it would bring in more than $165 million in tax revenue on an annual basis. And that's huge. I mean, think about what we could do with that money. Personally, I'd like to see it help to lower our taxes a little bit, but we could fix more roads that aren't just the city's responsibility. There's so many things we could do with it. And it just seems like everyone all around us is starting to legalize cannabis, and
it's
why
turned
aren't we?
into a whole new thing, right? It's remix, right, from the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it goes back even further, right?
Yeah.
But I find myself, I was really impressed with the Herald's article today. I think Karen Schneider, did an op-ed talking about breakwater, and then there was a bigger article in the paper about some sessions that are available to educate yourself, because it's not the grass from the 70s anymore. I don't even know all the terms, but so many are now using like the electronic devices or a lot of consumables, right? Like gummies and
Gummy bears,
cookie chocolates and butters and all these kinds of things. And then there are these variations on the theme, Delta 8 and Delta 10. I find myself having to really, when somebody talks about it, like, well, what is that? But as far as the, I think that $165 million that the governor's talking about, I believe that was both for medicinal and recreational. And I absolutely do support the medicinal use, because at least that's under a physician's, advice. And I'm still not 100% on the recreational, and not for any moral reasons, because I agree the revenue is very attractive. But what we've also seen in other states, I have friends in Colorado and other places where it is legal, the accidental, pet getting into a bag of gummies that got laid on the nightstand, or a toddler who, grabbed all the chocolate bar and ended up in the ER. And I mean, those are kind of whataboutisms, but
Yeah.
still, I think I'm just not 100% on the recreational yet.
Well, people just would need to be careful. I mean, whether it's legalized or they're just buying it, illegally, you just have to be careful with things like that because, you're right. Kids and pets can get into things, and you just never really know what's going to happen. It's interesting. People don't really think about stuff. Now that's something that they should think about. But I volunteer with a lot of different dog rescue groups, and one of the things I do is I do virtual home visits with people. And a young couple who was very health conscious, they had a cedar chest at the foot of their bed. And they took a lot of vitamins and supplements and stuff, and these bottles were all sitting there. Well, a dog could easily come along and grab that. And so I had to say, this is your first dog. You're going to have to move that stuff up where the dog can't get to it. And that's just with vitamins. So
Sure.
Imagine with something like this.
Lock boxes for your safes for any of your prescription or
Yeah.
even non-prescription,
Yeah.
right? Those accidental things.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Well, where is the city at in discussions of this?
Well, I believe that we do have a new council member, Aaron Wojciechowski, who mentioned in his campaign that he's interested in bringing this back. But we got to make a distinction between legalization and decriminalization, right? And it's my understanding, I haven't seen anything yet, but it's my understanding he would like to, bring that discussion back. And keep in mind, our officers do have the discretion about whether or not they do an ordinance violation versus charging criminally. And so, it has been mentioned that you could have kind of this backlash that occurs if you go with a decriminalization and they need to do some corrective behavior with someone. They could end up inadvertently only having the option of charging criminally as opposed to the city ordinance. So, those are some things to consider as well.
Sure. Okay, well, this morning, and again, we're taping this on June 17th, I had a Stormwater Utility Appeals Board meeting this morning, and it's at 7:30 in the morning. I can't believe you stuck me on a committee that meets that early.
Sucker!
I am not an early morning person.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody who does that.
I did it. But anyway, one of the things we talked about is money that the city is receiving in COVID relief funds. So I'd like to chat a little bit about, how much we're getting. And I believe that the city manager is looking to citizens to, step up and say, hey, we'd like to see this done with the money or that done with the money or, something along those lines.
And there have been various pots of COVID relief funds, right, all along the way. But I think what you're referring to, and I know city manager and council are looking for citizen input, nonprofit input, neighborhood association input on the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan funds. We're getting a little over $20 million that needs to be spent or allocated by 2024. And we've already gotten the first installment of that, but it does have several buckets, if you will, or I should say categories of eligibility, and it depends upon how you interpret each one of those. One of them being infrastructure such as water, sewer, broadband access. We were talking about that a little bit before the show. Hazard mitigation pay for essential workers, direct assistance to households and or businesses, things related to economic development, public health. And so there are these four categories, and there's a little more detail. You can go to Hot Topics on the city's homepage, scroll down, you'll see Hot Topics, and you'll have some links in there. You can do an online simple form for your individual citizen request out of that. And then there's also another separate form for like nonprofit groups as well.
So are you saying then, Lori, that an individual, if they had a need, I don't know what the need would be. Say they need to make some repair to their home and they don't have the funds to do that. Are you saying that they're able to make application? Or?
Well, I'm not saying that specifically, but that's an interesting point, because I could imagine a scenario in which a citizen looks at that form and says, well, geez, I can't replace my roof, or I can't replace my water heater, or something along those lines. I'm not quite sure what would happen with a direct request. This is more of a, at least my understanding was an intent to ask citizens how they think we should spend that, because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity that has multiple generational impact, right?
Yeah, right.
It's not like we need to fritter it away. No, we can't use it for tax relief. Okay. I mean, that's one thing that we know that we can't do. But certainly it would be interesting to see if folks did submit direct requests for direct assistance to households. If we had enough of those, would that, get the attention to say, hey, maybe we need to look at a program? But it's more programmatic or infrastructure specific, or in those other specific buckets. But again, it's open to interpretation.
But since we're on the subject of home repairs, this wasn't on our list. It wasn't on mine, and I don't think it was on yours. But if someone does need to make some repairs to their home, I do believe that the city offers is it a loan-free or a very low interest loan?
I believe there are several variations. So if you're a homeowner, or if it's a rental property, different programs. But on the homeowner end of it, I believe it's a zero interest loan, perhaps partially forgivable over a period of time, income qualified, although there are some other programs that if you're in a specified neighborhood association boundaries, that you have the Sold on Oshkosh $5,000 down payment assistance. So there's a number of programs, and we're going to probably talk about on one of your other items here. We've got a consultant working on an affordable housing study that we're hoping to see by August. That we may see some other recommendations come out of that, because as everyone is familiar, we've got this shortage right now in certain categories of housing. And when we talk about affordable housing, that can mean different things to different people depending on your income.
Right, yeah, for sure. But while we're on the subject of talking about boards also, I know that they mentioned during my meeting this morning that they still have a vacancy on that board. I would have to believe that there's probably vacancies on almost every board, with the exception of maybe one or two. Right?
Yes. And, pre-COVID, the council had added to all the boards and commissions that could statutorily allow us, you can't do it with police and fire commission, 2 alternate positions for those that did not already have them. So that created some more openings for many people to participate. And it was really interesting because we had this kind of roller coaster of public wanting to be involved with boards and commissions last year. We had kind of a little drop off of folks who, maybe they were jockeying to get their technology set up because we went all virtual. And that was a struggle for some folks. Other boards and commissions actually formed, for example, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, as a virtual committee. They had not met in person ever. And so a number of the boards and commissions now are looking at, when should we come back in person? A handful of them are starting to tiptoe back into in person, but several are saying, let's wait until we see a couple more months and let's stay virtual. And some folks got really accustomed to the convenience of it, as did many of the workforce, right?
Sure, yeah.
So it's really interesting how varied it was in the response. But yes, Bike and Pet, I know we need a couple more alternates. Some folks have been on boards and commissions so long, they said, you know what, I'm going to step back and do some other things and let somebody else have an opportunity. So we're grateful that they made the space, and we've got some folks coming on who've never served on boards and commissions before, and they're loving it. Some are trying it out and saying, well, I don't know if I can really fit that into my schedule. because as everything comes back in person, we're shifting again.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so, all they have to do is just go to the city's website.
Exactly.
And you can see what everyone, what every board and commission,
we have
what they do, what they stand for, what their, what their charge is, if you will. And it's a simple form.
The schedule, there's a new database that City Manager's Office basically got us more organized in that regard. And so absolutely, there's just a simple one-page application. The only requirement is that you're a citizen of Oshkosh for most of those boards and commissions, with a few exceptions. And that goes to the City Manager's Office. It gets forwarded to me. I make a recommendation to council. I call and interview you and make a recommendation to council. So yeah.
Yeah. So well, I managed to get up at 5:30 at 7:30 this morning for that meeting. But,
Thank you, thank you, especially for something as riveting as water utility.
Well, but
we need people there.
Yeah, I think that once I understand more of what they're doing and what their charge, their mission is, I think I will, find it to be more interesting. But that's true of any board and commission, I think. It takes you a few meetings at least to kind of get up to speed. And
we have council representatives on a good chunk of those boards and commissions. And I personally, in my 5 years, have tried to rotate through as many as I can to have a breadth. Some other council members prefer to stay put and go deep, so that there's a more deep experience. So everybody's got a different style there, but we're very appreciative of citizens giving their time, and certainly it puts your thumb on the pulse a little closer to City Hall.
It does, and I think it gives you a much better understanding of how the city really operates. You may not always agree, you may not always understand the little nuances of different things, but you have a general type understanding that becomes better focused once you're doing something like that. And since we're talking about boards, I spent a couple years on the Rental Housing Advisory Board. And of course, when that board was first created, it was so controversial. We had candidates running for city council simply because of that board. One that my crew still remembers, because I really raked that candidate over the coals, but good. But is there still so much backlash now that it's like 2 or 3 years in the rearview window?
Interestingly enough, there was a lot of building, because whenever we have a new board or commission, it takes a while to get their seat legs right, and get them functional.
Yeah.
Through the procedural, through the legal orientations on public meetings and public officials, and so then there was some statutory changes that made us change direction. I was on when you were on.
Yeah.
And interestingly, now, because we've had these eviction moratoriums that kind of keep getting extended, it's even more necessary than ever. So we like to have a balance of investment owners and tenants, as well as agencies who are involved with rentals in that. And so it's needed even more now than ever, I think.
Yeah. Are you still finding backlash from the landlords?
I see what you're saying.
Like in the beginning?
I think that, we've worked really hard to heal some of those divisions, and certainly having more input from some of those folks who were initially against, and trying to find common ground on educational opportunities for both tenants and investment owners, landlords. So I think that's started to kind of smooth out as we, again with 2020 in the rearview mirror, some of the battles that were chosen previously are maybe not quite as impassioned.
Sure. I've just been given notification that we're down to like 20 minutes, so we
got 2 more pages to cover.
Oh no, just like 1.5, I think.
Okay.
So, but still, we want to get to them.
I told Cheryl I felt like I was taking a test at school going through that.
No, I just have a tendency to write out everything so that I don't forget something. So for years we have talked about, the old Pioneer Inn property on Keeney Island, which is over on the far east side of town. And recently some things started happening with that. What is the status of that piece of property right now?
So what I can say, I know very little about the most recent or the current potential proposal, but I do believe we may be getting a preview of that from a developer who has an interest perhaps this next week at council. And, that property, is always the magic topic during every campaign, during every strategic planning session, what's going on with the Pioneer. And so it's really exciting to see some of the other things are starting to come together in the Sawdust District that we had hoped, and are starting to realize. And we'll be, looking at 9th Street, continuing down that direction to make that connection to a trailhead, the Riverwalk, continuing on. There's a little piece of that island that's publicly owned. Not everybody realizes it's kind of like a little tip of a peninsula that, but certainly exciting. I wish I had more specifics to give you.
Okay.
We're almost there.
All right. Well, that's good because, that's such a prime location. It's such a beautiful location. You still have, I don't even know who runs the marina that's there.
I believe that's Art Dumke.
Does he have anything to do with the?
Yes.
So he owns the land that the Pioneer used to be on too.
I believe so.
Okay.
And I believe he's, coordinating with the potential next beautiful thing. And the really exciting thing that we've had in my opportunity to be part of history here in Oshkosh is, getting that additional 77 acres of beautiful lakeshore park started. We've got a Four Seasons building that's, going to break ground very soon. And the reopening to the public, that Riverwalk going down around Pioneer as well.
Yeah. Well, that we'll have to keep an eye on that. So let's talk about what's going on along Oshkosh Avenue. We're very close to the new location for Oshkosh Corp. There is so much stuff happening there.
Yes.
And here's my concern. I think it's great that all that development is happening. My concern, though, Lori, is that it is going to turn out to be another cluster like we have down at 41 and 9th. I mean, how much more can possibly go in at that location, and how far are we going to push it at this location on Oshkosh Avenue? So what's all going in there?
I wish I had a map to put up on the screen, but certainly there are some, private, I guess they call them outlots, that are closer to Oshkosh Avenue that are under development. I think many people have seen the new hotel that's being built. I don't recall the chain name or the franchise, but the Dunkin' Donuts, a lot of people are excited about, which is interesting. There's a Dunkin' Donuts everywhere else, and everybody's asking, well, what about the KFC? And
actually, Dunkin' just calls themselves Dunkin' now.
Oh. Oops, see, I'm out of the loop.
It's fine. You're entitled to goof up.
Well, I'll have to try their iced coffee and see how it compares with Burger King.
But I do think they still have donuts.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, donuts, and they probably have gluten-free for all I know. If
I'd
they
like
have
to see a
sugar-free-
Krispy Kreme come to town. They have some of the best donuts.
And then I believe there's like another building that's already constructed that they're already in. I believe it's an accounting firm, possibly. I think there's going to be a drive-through, maybe pharmacy going in. If that might be old information. Things change depending upon what the developers are able to, work and attract. Certainly, everybody's familiar with the Casey's and that. So yeah, it's starting to fill in, but it's. I don't think they're halfway yet with what
Wow.
with what's going to go along between the park development, because you've got Oshkosh Corp this lovely building at the water's edge and the river walk, which we had there were only 4 people at the groundbreaking, or I'm sorry, the ribbon cutting for that because of COVID.
Yep.
And but then this active space that's to the east, which will be where the Four Seasons building and some other, there's a cute little beach that not very many people know about over there, a little pebbly beach that's right there at the end of Rainbow Park where the new Riverwalk starts. And that's right in the area. There's some nature and habitat that's being preserved in that process too, which is really exciting for the neighbors that brought that up. Thank you to those neighbors.
Well, I know that some fishermen were not real happy because they were sort of being displaced from down there. Do you know if there's still a place down there, with the exception of along the riverbed itself in, Rainbow Park? But this was, you'd go down, I think, Pinocchio, and you'd kind of go all the way around and along in there just before you got to the old clubhouse for the golf course.
And that's that little beach area that I was thinking of.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's a fishing spot or a hot spot or not for
but
fish.
But it's city owned.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's good to know.
Yep. And I think there's plans for like maybe a personal watercraft launch or kayak launch or something in there too.
Okay.
Don't test my memory on the exact specifics there, but
okay.
Yeah.
Well, and I know that the city is at some point looking at that intersection of Sawyer and Oshkosh Avenue. Everybody keeps saying to me, "Oh, they're probably going to put in a roundabout." Well, a roundabout cannot work there.
No.
It, from just an infrastructure standpoint and a engineering standpoint, it can't work because you've got the bridge. You need a bigger approach anyway, and you need a larger parcel of land for a roundabout. That does not afford that there. And also, with a bridge right there, you can't have traffic backing up over when the bridge is open, it already backs up.
Right.
And can you imagine once it would close? And it would be a nightmare. There's no way that a roundabout would work there.
I think we're still a handful of years out from getting there yet, but certainly, that is an area that needs addressed in the city's planning.
Yeah. But no roundabout, right?
I don't believe so.
I would campaign against that so badly.
I could be mistaken, but never say never, right?
Yeah. I don't think it would work there. You mentioned a housing shortage, and it's not just Oshkosh; it's all over the country.
Yes, absolutely.
And we see these astronomical prices of homes because there is such a shortage. And I worry about this from a few standpoints. Our regular, ordinary, everyday John Does and Jane Smiths going to be able to afford housing because the prices are so high. And the other side of it is I don't know how they're getting financing because an appraisal, it would not appraise out at the price that these properties are going for. And so my concern is A, people not being able to afford housing, and B, are we going to end up with some kind of a bubble like we had, wasn't that 2008 or something like that, where people were getting into financial trouble because they were being approved for loans that they had no business being approved for loans that high.
Well, and certainly, I hear all those things as well, and I can say from personal experience, my husband and I recently offered significantly over on a potential downsize home for us, and we still got beat out, but we weren't cash buyers, so. I don't know that it's so much a matter of cash buyers, but certainly we've started to catch up, right? Our housing costs were, kind of very modest for many years, and with this, what we're seeing is we're starting to catch up with surrounding areas, and you are seeing many life changes again. The market has changed so much because people either want bigger or they want smaller or they're moving here, and community development has and council approved a consultant to help us work on our affordable housing study, which we're hoping to see somewhere in the August timeframe. But some of the peekaboo preview numbers show that there's an especial, in the rental market at least, especially a shortage in the folks who make $25,000 or less a year. So fixed income, part-time service industry, or laid off folks that are in that income. So anything under $500 is in a deficit. And then we have kind of an excess in this other income bracket. I believe it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like the 50 to 100,000 maybe. And then when you start to get over that, where you have households that, you know, are above that 100 and 150,000 a year, again, a shortage of what would be affordable for them.
Yeah.
And so I'm real interested to see some of the creative uses that, you know, maybe vacant commercial property, adaptive reuse, or accessory dwelling units where you convert a garage or an attic. You know, it'll be interesting to see what their recommendations are in addition to the actual needs.
Yeah. What did you call that, Lori? Where they're converting like
Adaptive reuse.
adaptive reuse.
So, for example, look at the beach building right next here to City Hall.
Yep.
You know, that was a former school many years ago. Actually, City Hall is an example of adaptive reuse. It was a school.
It was a school many moons ago.
But you're seeing, I think Smith School is being converted to some income affordable units. You see, I believe one of the Burns properties, it was a former bank down on like 9th and Oregon. Beautiful example. Transom windows and all these interesting architectural features that are now kind of part of that trend. So yeah, we may see some additional. There's been some discussions about the small, you know, homes and some projects with that as a pilot program, and so we'll see if they actually, you know, get built.
Small homes.
Like less than 1,000 square feet, or less than
like
what
what
500.
people would typically think of as tiny homes.
Yeah, somewhat.
Okay, so
but
something
maybe
along
a
those
little
lines.
more, you know, permanent in nature, not something on wheels. I mean,
Right.
I don't think the city's going to get so crazy as to say, well, we'll let you bring your camper in now.
We could have we could have a tiny home lot
Exactly.
and rent out the land.
Yes.
You know, and I think adaptive reuse, that's exactly what I think needs to happen with so many of these buildings that, you know, companies are finding, as you well know, Lori, that people are very productive working from home. They're not just sitting around eating candy and watching talk shows all day. They're working, and they're very productive. In many cases, more productive than if they were actually in the office. And so,
and with childcare being such a shortage, I mean, we are so deficient on
transportation.
childcare and transportation issues that, you know, yes, employers are, you're seeing some adaptations that are lingering beyond coming back from COVID.
There are some employers, I've talked to people who work for a number of employers, and they've said they are not planning on renewing their leases. Because why should they pay to lease a building or to own a building and then have those mortgage payments and the utilities and providing parking for their employees when they can just let their people work from home and they don't have any real overhead associated with anything. And so my fear is we're going to see a lot of empty buildings sitting around in this country. So let's figure out how to do something so we can end this housing shortage.
Well, and in the planning world, when I was studying for my bachelor's and then my master's, and they talked about the highest and best use, you might be talking about, okay, riverfront property, that needs to be Class A office space. Mm-hmm. I wonder if we're going to start seeing kind of a revision of what highest and best use is. But that's a very age-old tradition of looking at that. And so, I think you're right. We're seeing, and it's not always an either or. Sometimes it's a hybrid. People are doing flex, where maybe they're in the office for 2 or 3 days a week and home the others, and trying to still balance the caring for an elder parent or children and switching off with the spouse kind of thing.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of that. People got very creative.
And multi-use buildings too. I have to talk about the new grocery store that's going in.
The co-op?
Yes, the co-op.
Yes,
of which
exciting.
I'm a member. Are you?
Yes, we're
Yes.
number 11.
I don't know what number we are, but we're members, and that is set to open.
Mixed use?
Yes. So that's set to open very soon. But the store, the grocery store, is on the main level, and then you have apartments
Yes.
up above. And not only are they apartments, but they allow dogs.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yes, they do know. I do
Do
know
they charge extra?
that I don't know. That I don't know. But I mean, you know what? I have a problem with somebody who charges extra rent for a pet. If you want to charge a pet deposit, that's fine. But to charge extra rent, no, there's no reason for that. That's just gouging people. That's all that is. But yes, they do allow pets.
Interesting.
So, including dogs.
Yeah, I think
So.
we are seeing more interest in the, canine fur baby world of being accommodating. We're starting to see in, some of the development proposals that are coming forth for even 7th Avenue down the Sawdust District, a little mini dog park maybe, or, discussions about using some of the RDA kind of less desirable development lots. So yeah, I think dog friendly is coming to Oshkosh.
Yeah, it's long overdue. It's long overdue. I
Just remember to register and vaccinate.
Yes. License.
License.
That's if you get caught without having a licensed cat or dog, I think the fine is like $150 or something like that. I mean, I don't know that for certain because my pets are always licensed and always have been and always will be. But I heard of someone and they got nailed with a fine, and I think it was around $150.
Interesting.
So, and when the license is so inexpensive.
It's only like $5?
Well, if your pet is spayed or neutered, yes.
Okay.
So, and all mine are. So we've got three, $15 a year.
Yep.
I mean, that's a small price to pay.
And in recent years, council passed allowing dogs on the park trails. Hopefully
On leashes, though.
On leashes, and also responsible pet owners picking up their waste in that. It's really important because not everybody, is a fur baby lover. And, there are some fears and phobias and, sometimes they get away from you. So.
Yeah. I know we're running out of time, and I want to jump down to one of the things that you had wanted to talk about, and that was the Aqua Hawk water alert.
Yeah, so
tell
this
us
is
about
a
that.
super cool little tool. I had the pleasure of being in the beta testing group before it got released to the public. And that's also under our hot topics on the city's webpage, front webpage. There's a link to, it's a simple registration, and then you can set settings on it to give you alerts via text or email about your usage and your estimated bill. And I set mine to, if we go over like an anticipated $75 a month. Now that was a little harder when we had 5 people in the house, but now that we're back down to a smaller number. But in any event, you can set it based on price or number of gallons, and it's quite useful. And especially for, from what I understand, someone's already had the benefit that there was a leak, probably from a leaking toilet or something like that they weren't aware of. And they got this alert, and they were able to catch it in time so that it didn't end up being this big surprise when they got the monthly bill.
Yeah. How is that monthly bill thing working out?
I don't know. I think there are a number of households who are very appreciative of the ability to have a monthly digestible bill for budgeting purposes, because when it was quarterly and you'd get that big bill at the end of the quarter. But then there are some others who, because we have had increases in our water and sewer bill, there's no question, and there are more increases coming. We've got this huge clear well project that, you know, we've delayed for a significant amount of time, and it must be done. Our quality of drinking water depends on this project. It is critical.
How much is that going to cost?
24-ish million
Oh
is
boy,
the current
could we put
estimate.
this 20 million to
Well,
that?
you could. You could.
Well, it would keep our water bills from going up again.
Well,
I
it
know
wouldn't
that it's
keep
going to
it
be
from
all
going-
in.
It wouldn't keep it from going up again entirely, but it
But
might
somewhat.
have a significant impact, and that's true.
Because every time we do something, whether it's repainting a water tower, putting up a new water tower, we're seeing our rates go up. We have had consistent increases in our water rates.
And everything we do to mitigate the floods, the detention ponds and retention ponds, and the green infrastructure, and you know, those kinds of projects to reduce flooding, certainly it is a very expensive endeavor. The council could decide on a one and done. I think city manager kind of referred to it as we could put the whole thing towards that. Or we could also look at different elements. So it'll be real interesting to see what we get, you know, in terms of public feedback from boards and commissions, from those nonprofits, as to how they think we should use that.
Yeah. Well, you know, I don't really care if it's monthly or quarterly. I think that monthly is certainly costing the city more in paper and mailing costs and that kind of thing. I mean, if you can budget for something monthly, it's not that much of a leap to budget for something quarterly. You know how much your bills are running for the most part. But what I think has been bothersome, because, you know, I look at some of these groups that are on Facebook. What is bothersome to many people is and you can go on these different groups and read it, is the fact that if you pay your bill by mail, it goes to somewhere in Illinois. It's with U.S. Bank in Illinois. And
Was it Associated, maybe? Associated Bank? Or one of the banks changed their headquarters
well,
or
I
something.
thought it was U.S. Bank.
It could be.
I could be wrong. But they said that's just stupid, you know, because you have to allow for all that time then for it to get there.
But you can do the ACH withdrawal. And that
Is there a
was
charge for that, though?
the hope was that the more folks that would sign up for that, you know, auto pay, it would reduce some of the paper billing and obviously the timing piece of it, so that, you know, that wasn't an issue. I'm not clear if there's not a charge. I don't want to speak improperly.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Well, why doesn't the city do this? Like with so many other credit card companies, and geez, we've got 1 minute, I better wrap this up quickly. I'll make this suggestion. The city should, like so many other credit card companies do, ask customers if they want an e-bill, and then we can save some costs there.
Yes.
So I'll leave it at that.
Can
Lori,
I run
thanks.
through the quick roads?
No.
We're out of time.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
we're down
look
to
for
about
road
20 seconds.
construction updates on the city website.
There we go. Sorry about that, but thanks so much for being here.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time. Until then, take good care and stay safe. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.